My name was Ahmad. I was a Quran teacher in a rigid Islamic school, a guardian of tradition and discipline. In my community, I was seen as a pillar of faith, respected for my devotion and fervor. Yet, beneath that surface lay a chasm, a growing emptiness that whispered shadows of doubt. Every prayer carried the weight of unspoken questions, and every recitation felt like a fragile facade. I was living a life that reflected obedience, but inside, I was trapped, yearning for something deeper. Then, in a moment that defied understanding, everything changed. During a ritual prayer, I found myself transported beyond the confines of reality, into a dark, desolate desert. There, I encountered him, the one they never dared to speak about, Jesus. In that haunting stillness, he called my name, not as a rival to my beliefs, but as a gentle truth that shattered my illusions. He revealed the hidden lies that masked the peace I so desperately sought. It was a revelation that challenged the very foundation of my existence and left me trembling. When I returned to my world, I was a marked man, a heretic against the very faith I had lived. My family turned their backs, my community threatened. The guilt and isolation I felt weighed heavily upon me, yet the fire of truth burned brighter. There was a call to seek further, to explore the profound message of Jesus, and despite the fear of losing everything, I could no longer ignore the yearning for spiritual authenticity. In secret, I embarked on an extraordinary quest for knowledge and truth, navigating a world rife with peril. Each word I read, every whisper of faith I discovered ignited a spark of hope within me, awakening a purpose I never knew existed. I found a small group of believers who had walked similar paths, and together we explored the freedom that comes with truth, a truth that binds us even in our darkest hours. In this video, I'll unveil my journey from bondage to liberation, a testimony of how one encounter reshaped my reality. As I share this story, I invite you to join me in this awakening, a movement toward a deeper understanding of love and spiritual freedom. Before we dive in, please share in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your location. I want to feel the global heartbeat of this truth. And if you love Jesus and are ready for more revelations, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. What I'm about to reveal will challenge your spirit and transform your understanding of faith forever. In the rigid Islamic school where I spent my formative years, every moment felt steeped in a heavy atmosphere of strict adherence to religious dogma. Our teachers instilled fear in us from a young age, teaching us that questioning authority or tradition was not only discouraged, but could lead to dire consequences. The air was thick with tension, our young minds molded into compliance, and the possibilities of dissent were buried beneath layers of obedience. I was taught that faith was synonymous with unwavering loyalty to prescribed beliefs. Yet, somewhere deep inside, I began to feel an unsettling sense that there was something more, something beyond the confines of what I had been taught. One day, while praying in solitude, a harrowing event changed everything. It was a moment that felt almost surreal. During an ordinary prayer, amid recitations, I suddenly felt an overwhelming presence envelop me. As I closed my eyes and surrendered to the moment, I felt a jolt of energy course through me. And then, there was Jesus. It was as if he called out my name, his voice resonating within my very being. This epiphany shattered the heavy constraints of my upbringing, forcing me to confront the hidden truths that had been obscured by the teachings of fear and obedience. In that sacred encounter, Jesus revealed to me the intricate web of deception that exists within the belief systems I had been fed. He shared revelations about the spiritual war being waged not just within individual hearts but also in nations and communities across the globe. I was shown visions of the elite manipulating society, exploiting our fears, and fostering division among people. It was painfully clear that the very essence of faith was being weaponized against us. a truth I had never understood until that moment. My heart raced with urgency as I realized how many were still caught in this trap, unaware of the concealed agendas that governed their lives. While the light of truth burned bright, I could also feel the dark weight of sorrow for those still submerged in ignorance. I saw families torn apart by ideologies that privileged power over compassion, and nations locked in conflict, fueled by greed. Each revelation pierced my heart, awakening a deep sense of responsibility within me. I understood then that my life had been a preparation for this moment, the divine call to question, to seek, and ultimately to share what I had learned. This was not just my awakening. It was an appeal to others caught in similar struggles, to join me in resisting the spiraling tide of deception that drowned so many in despair. Yet, as I grappled with these profound truths, I felt the crushing weight of fear once more. What would my family think if they found out? The very community that raised me would surely brand me a heretic, an outcast. I could see their faces, filled with disappointment, wrapped in a fear not unlike my own. Still, I felt an indomitable urge to stand against the norm, to embrace the awakening I had received despite the potential fallout. In the face of fear, I began to gather the courage to emerge from the shadows of my upbringing, determined to advocate for a love that transcended dogma and illuminated the path toward genuine spiritual freedom. The road ahead was fraught with uncertainty, yet I could no longer ignore the calling in my heart. Armed with the truths unveiled to me by Jesus, I resolved to embark on a mission, one that would allow me to spread the message of love, awareness, and awakening in a world so desperately in need of healing. Each step I planned to take felt like a declaration of war against the spiritual deception encompassing us, igniting a desire not just to fight for myself, but to join hands with others who sought the same freedom. With every thought, every heartbeat, the urgency of this spiritual battle loomed large before me, beckoning me toward a destiny filled with both hope and trepidation. For as long as I can. Remember, I've been a dedicated Quran teacher in my community. At 30 years old, I was regarded as a pillar of faith, a man who embodied the principles of Islam with fervor. I taught my students the verses, the teachings, the fundamentals of our faith. Yet behind the facade of respectability lay a profound emptiness that isolated me. Every prayer I offered felt like an echo in a vast emptiness. I recited the words, but they began to feel hollow, devoid of the life they once held. There was a constant wrestling within me, a tension between duty and desire, belief and doubt. Then came the moment that changed everything. While conducting evening prayers at the mosque one quiet night, a sudden wave of exhaustion washed over me. As I knelt in supplication, seeking the intimacy I longed for, I felt my consciousness slipping away. In that instant, I fell into darkness, seemingly detached from my physical body, in a state that resembled a near-death experience. In that shadowed realm, the atmosphere shifted, and before me appeared a radiant figure, Jesus. His presence filled the void, radiating love, light, and an undeniable truth that surged through my spirit. Ahmad, he spoke, and the sound resonated deep within my soul. Suddenly my heart was exposed to revelations that transcended my earthly understanding. You are embroiled in a spiritual war, he continued. Your teachings, though profound, have been clouded by a hidden agenda. The elite thrive on the division you see in society. They seek to manipulate the very essence of faith to keep humanity shackled in fear and deception. Those words struck me like lightning, igniting a flame of awareness that had long been dormant. I realized that the spiritual emptiness I felt stemmed from teachings that prioritized conformity over genuine connection with the divine. Jesus revealed to me the interconnectedness of souls, the idea that our struggles are collective rather than individual. I was shown glimpses of the world's turmoil, wars fueled not by necessity but by greed, families torn apart by ideologies that prioritized power over compassion. When I saw this, it became painfully clear that I could no longer turn a blind eye. The visions illuminated how bypassing the truth perpetuated an endless cycle of suffering. The weight of this knowledge both frightened and empowered me. I began to see how my own teachings, while rooted in faith, needed to encompass a broader understanding of love, acceptance, and awakening. But as the light of understanding illuminated my path, I felt the oppressive weight of fear creeping back in. I thought of my community, my family, and the reverence that had defined my role. What would they think if they found out about my encounter? Would they see me as a heretic, someone who had strayed from the righteous path? Yet, the urgency to speak the truth burned brighter than my fears. I felt called to step into the light, to share my revelation and rally others to question and awaken. The inner turmoil reached a crescendo. I was caught between the comfort of the known and the profound call of the truth. As I returned to my body, gasping for breath, I knew my life would never be the same. I was filled with a newfound purpose, a mission I could no longer ignore. The spiritual war that had been waged around me became personal, and I resolved to confront it head-on. My heart swelled with the hope that others could awaken too. I envisioned gatherings of people, discussions that could spark curiosity and transformation. With every step away from fear, I felt an overwhelming compulsion to join the fight for the truth. I could no longer hide behind the walls of tradition. It was time to face the world openly, shedding my old identity to embrace the calling that Christ had placed upon my heart. With my soul invigorated, yet my path uncertain, I knew there lay before me a journey fraught with challenges, but one I was now ready to embark upon. As I continued, my role as a respected Quran teacher, an unsettling disconnection began to seep into my prayers. Every evening, I would kneel in supplication, reciting the words that once brought me peace. Yet something felt fundamentally off. The fervor I had felt in my earlier years was fading. Instead of connection, I experienced a growing void, a sense of repression that clung to me like a shadow. Nights turned into restless periods of questioning as I grappled with an inner turmoil I didn't dare voice. While I taught my students with passion, the joy had begun to slip away, and I felt trapped within the confines of my own beliefs. My dreams took on a darker tone, and in those fleeting moments of sleep, I began to see the image of a caged bird, a symbol that resonated with my silent suffering. The bird would flutter helplessly against the bars, desperate for freedom, and its cries echoed in the depths of my soul. I would awaken in a cold sweat, heart racing, the symbolism weighing heavily on me. I longed for liberation, both physically and spiritually. My life had become a series of rituals, yet I felt imprisoned by the very faith that had once given me purpose. Every night felt like an endless cycle, a reminder that I could no longer ignore the truth hiding behind my eyes. One fateful night, as I struggled with these conflicting emotions, I found myself on the brink of an experience that would change everything. During a particularly desperate moment in prayer, I collapsed to the floor, as if all the weight of my unsaid fears had become too much to bear. In that instance, I was transported to a realm of light and presence, enveloped by an energy that felt both overwhelming and comforting. It was there that I met Jesus. His voice, gentle yet profound, cut through the darkness of my confusion. "Ahmad, you feel the disconnection for a reason," he said, and those words resonated like a bell across the depths of my spirit. In that divine meeting, Jesus unfolded the layers of deception that had clouded my understanding. He revealed how the spiritual war around us was fueled by hidden agendas, those in power manipulating faith to foster division among the masses. I was shown the intricate web of control spun by the elite, who thrived on fear and pushed narratives that suppressed the truth. The cage that had held my spirit captive was not merely my own. It was the collective experience of so many who had been misled, trapped in a cycle of unquestioning belief. I felt deep sorrow for the countless souls who remained unaware of the falsehoods they clung to, their lives dictated by a system designed to keep them in submission. As his revelations enveloped me, I observed the world through a new lens. I saw the ramifications of these deceptions manifesting in wars, injustices, and the division sown among people. Each conflict a further extension of the hidden agendas I had come to understand. The urgency of the message was palpable. I realized my own awakening was merely the beginning of a much larger movement toward liberation. There were so many who, like me, had felt confined, longing to break free, but afraid to challenge the very foundations of their beliefs. Jesus' call beckoned me to rise and share this truth, to become a messenger of hope and awakening amid the darkness. But in the midst of my exhilaration, a wave of fear washed over me. What would become of my life if I chose to follow this path? My community, my family, would they accept the changes that came with my newfound understanding? I was torn between the comfort of the familiar and the undeniable conviction that my journey had just begun. The decision to embrace these revelations would mean stepping away from everything I had known, risking isolation for the sake of truth. Yet I could not silence the burning desire to fight against the deception that imprisoned so many. With my heart pounding in anticipation, I knew I had a choice to make, a choice that would determine not just my destiny, but the collective awakening of those around me. As I entered into my usual prayer ritual, I felt a shift, a weightlessness that pulled me deeper into my consciousness. The world around me faded away, and I found myself enveloped in darkness, standing alone in a vast desert. The sand was warm beneath my feet, and the sky was a velvet expanse of deep indigo, dotted with stars that twinkled like distant truths waiting to be discovered. Fear began to creep in, yet before I could fully grasp the situation, I heard a voice, gentle yet powerful, cutting through the silence like a warm breeze. "Ahmad," it called, and my heart quickened with recognition. It was Jesus. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming compassion radiating from him, a love that transcended my doubts and fears. "You've been searching for peace, yet the hidden lies have clouded your vision," he said. I was struck by the depth of understanding in his words. He unveiled the concealed deceptions I had long accepted as truth, the teachings and expectations that had dictated my life, smothering my spirit and stifling my quest for spiritual freedom. I felt the chains binding me click open, revealing a landscape of possibilities that had previously seemed out of reach. As his words washed over me, revelations unfolded like petals blooming in the dark. I saw visions of the spiritual war being waged beyond the confines of my understanding, a battle not just for my soul, but for the hearts of millions. It became clear how the elite manipulated faith and societal structures to maintain control, enforcing a hidden agenda that thrived on fear and division. I witnessed how leaders wielded their power, inciting conflicts that pitted us against one another, while keeping the truth veiled in shadows. My heart ached as the realization settled in. I had been living under a false narrative, one designed to keep me compliant and disconnected from the divine love that Jesus embodied. In the depth of the desert, time lost its meaning as I absorbed the truth that burst forth before me. The world was a landscape fraught with deception, a realm where spiritual bondage masked itself as righteousness. I felt the heartbreak of the countless souls ensnared in a cycle of suffering, their spirits dimmed by the weight of unyielding beliefs. But amid that sorrow, a flicker of hope ignited within me. I understood that the essence of my calling had been waiting for this very awakening, to rise against the deception and share the truth I had encountered with others who yearned for liberation. Yet as much as the experience filled me with joy and understanding, I felt the harsh reality of what lay ahead. The confrontation with my community, my family, loomed large. Would I be met with acceptance or rejection? The fear of condemnation seeped into my heart. I had built my life around the expectations of those closest to me, and now I was being called to dismantle everything I had known. The struggle within me intensified, the fight between the safety of conformity and the exhilarating, yet terrifying call to embrace my newfound purpose. It dawned on me that I was being asked not only to receive this truth, but to become a vessel for its dissemination, to be bold in my awakening and invite others to join this spiritual war. With each moment that passed in the desert, I felt the urgency of my mission crystallizing. I knew I could no longer remain silent. The truth beckoned to be shared. I could not turn my back on the revelations given to me, nor could I watch as others continued to suffer in ignorance. The weight of responsibility pressed down on my soul, compelling me to take a stand against the deception that held sway over so many. In that dark expanse, filled with the light of Jesus' presence, I recognized that this journey was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning, and with resolve, I prepared to step boldly into the world, determined to carry the light of the truth, no matter the cost. When I returned from that life-altering experience, the world I once knew felt like a distant memory. I awoke in my familiar surroundings, but everything had shifted. The moment I shared my encounter with Jesus, the warmth of his compassion still fresh in my heart, I was met with harsh rejection from my family and community. They branded me a heretic, a traitor to the faith that had been the cornerstone of our lives. I stood among them, their faces twisted with disappointment and anger, feeling as though I'd betrayed the very roots that nourished my existence. It was as if I'd stepped into a living nightmare, isolated and alone amidst a sea of judgment. The profound guilt of this separation bore down heavily on me. How could I reconcile the teachings of love, mercy, and awakening that Jesus had shown me with the pain I now inflicted upon my loved ones? I longed for their acceptance, while simultaneously yearning to explore the depths of his teachings. The desire to share what I had learned was at war with the fear of losing the very things I had cherished. I often found myself grappling with this dichotomy, torn between my heart's longing for truth and the societal chains that held me captive. Loneliness enveloped me, wrapping itself around my spirit in a way that felt suffocating. Nights were the hardest. I would lie awake, haunted by thoughts of my family, their voices echoing in my mind. I remembered the moments of laughter, the prayers we shared, and the bond that had once felt unbreakable. But now, in my pursuit of spiritual truth, I couldn't ignore the messages I had received. The hidden agenda that had been laid bare in my encounter with Jesus demanded my attention, urging me to confront the deception that permeated not only my life, but the world at large. In my solitude, I began to delve deeper into the teachings of Jesus, poring over texts that spoke of love and redemption, and the call to live authentically. I felt my heart awaken to the realization that the elite orchestrated a narrative designed to keep us divided, nurturing a spiritual war that raged just beneath the surface of everyday life. The truth was not just a personal journey for me, it was a collective awakening that needed to ripple across the world. Each day, the weight of this revelation intensified within me, igniting a fire of determination and urgency. I envisioned others out there, like me, still ensnared in the webs of deception and yearning for freedom. Yet, as I contemplated my next steps, fear crept back into my thoughts. Would I have the strength to stand against the tide of disdain from my community? What if my exploration led to further alienation? The stakes felt incredibly high, forcing me to wrestle with the reality of becoming an outcast for the sake of embracing the truth I now knew. I weighed the comfort of conformity against the exhilarating call to live a life of authenticity, and I felt a trembling in my spirit, stirring a sense of urgency to act. The moment felt pivotal, a crossroads where I could choose to embrace my awakening and, despite the cost, begin to champion the truth for myself and for others. My heart raced at the thought of what lay ahead. The spiritual battle was not just my own. It was a call for all of us to rise up, confront the hidden agendas, and reclaim our right to live in the light of truth. After my profound encounter with Jesus, I found myself overwhelmed with a sense of urgency to explore the teachings of Christianity, yet I was acutely aware of the dangers that lay ahead. I knew I could not openly share my newfound understanding or curiosity without facing severe repercussions from my family and community. So, cunningly, I embarked on a clandestine journey, binge-watching videos and reading everything I could find about Jesus and his teachings in the dead of night. The flickering light of my computer screen became my only solace, providing a hidden sanctuary, where my soul could breathe and seek the truth. In those quiet hours, I absorbed each message like a parched traveler in a desert. Every video I watched ignited a spark of awakening within me. I was drawn to the stories of others who had walked similar paths, individuals who had dared to challenge the norms of their upbringing. Their testimonies resonated deeply, revealing how they too had faced the spiritual war that I was now confronted with. As I listened to their experiences, it became increasingly clear that the deception I had experienced wasn't unique. It was a widespread affliction imposed by the elite powers seeking to control the hearts and minds of the faithful. Through this journey, I stumbled upon a small support group, an online community where kindred spirits gathered to share their struggles and triumphs. It was in these virtual discussions that I found not only comfort, but also a sense of belonging. I connected with people who were navigating their spiritual awakenings, each grappling with the weight of their decisions and the fallout that could ensue. Our shared understanding provided solace against the loneliness of my situation, and while I felt a renewed sense of peace being part of this group, the lingering anxiety about losing everything I held dear gnawed at the edges of my heart. In the company of these new friends, the fear of rejection from my traditional upbringing loomed large. I was torn between the vibrant sense of freedom that studying the Bible offered and the harsh reality of the world outside, a world where loyalty to my family and faith was everything. I wrestled internally, yearning to break free from the chains of deception while grappling with the consequences that could follow. What would my family say? Would my community turn their back on me? Each thought was a reminder of the risk involved in standing up for the truth, a truth which now felt sacred, yet perilous. Thus I continued to navigate these turbulent waters, determined to strengthen my faith while grappling with the reality of possible ostracization. The urgency to share this awakening, my transformation, remained firmly planted in my spirit. I could feel the walls of fear pushing down on me, yet the whispers of Jesus resonated louder, urging me to embrace this new path. I envisioned a future not just for myself, but for those still imprisoned by spiritual deception. Each day, my desire to further explore this new world intensified. With every passing moment, I found myself at a crossroads, fully aware that the choices I made now would ultimately determine the direction of my life, and potentially, the lives of others seeking their own truth in this ongoing spiritual war. As I delved deeper into the spiritual truths revealed to me during my encounter with Jesus, an undeniable realization began to take root in my heart. My experience was not merely a personal awakening, it was a divine calling, a summons to step into a purpose much greater than myself. I felt an overwhelming desire to testify about the truth I had encountered, a truth that could awaken others who were still ensnared by the deception that lay thick in the air. I understood that I was now part of a larger narrative, a spiritual war being waged against the hidden agendas of the elite who sought to pit us against one another. The more I wrestled with these revelations, the more I realized how vital it was for me to share my story of awakening. I was just one voice, yet I could feel the collective cry of countless souls yearning for liberation. My heart swelled with urgency as the implications of this war unfolded around me. The divisions I saw in society, the conflicts tearing families apart, were orchestrated by those who thrived on chaos and fear. I could no longer ignore the truth of what was happening. I had once been a teacher of the Quran, but now I felt called to teach the love and compassion exemplified by Jesus, to break down the walls of a hostility that had been built around us. In the dim corners of my soul, I still felt echoes of fear and doubt. What would people think of my testimony? Would they view me as a heretic? But these doubts began to fade in the face of the larger mission I sensed was at hand. As the awareness of the spiritual war grew, so did my resolve. I understood that every moment I spent in silence was a moment lost to the forces of deception that strove to keep humanity in the dark. My mission became clear. I needed to awaken those around me, to raise their awareness of the oppressive narratives that governed their lives. It wasn't just about me. It was about all of us reclaiming our voice and truth. As I explored the teachings of Jesus more earnestly, I uncovered profound wisdom that resonated deeply within me. I learned about the unconditional love he preached, the compassion and grace that crossed the boundaries of culture and religion. These messages were desperately needed in a world rife with division and hatred. I envisioned gatherings where we could share our stories of transformation, where we could inspire hope in those feeling lost and marginalized. I felt an insatiable desire to connect with others who were awakening, fostering a community that could stand firm against the tides of deception. Each day, I felt the weight of my calling intensifying as I witnessed the struggles of those around me. The realization that our world was manipulated by a hidden agenda stirred something deep within my spirit. I could no longer accept the status quo. I pondered how many others were suffering in silence, yearning for the embrace of a truth that could set them free. As I began to take small steps toward my mission, sharing my story online, engaging in discussions, I felt a mixture of peace and apprehension. The path ahead was uncertain, but I was determined to follow where the revelation had led me. The echoes of the spiritual war pulsed through my veins, calling me forward into the light of awakening. The battle for souls was at hand, and I was ready to join the fight. After everything that had happened, the decision to leave my home felt monumental. I found myself standing at the threshold of my old life, a life filled with rituals and expectations that now seemed suffocating. I had heard the call from Jesus, and that revelation had transformed me in ways I couldn't fully comprehend yet. Adopting a new identity was not just a physical change. It was a symbolic journey into the unknown, a pilgrimage toward freedom. Armed with the truth I had come to know, I packed what little I could and stepped into the waiting arms of the desert, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. Each step I took through the vast expanse of the desert felt like shedding layers of my former self. The sun beat down on me, yet I felt an invigorating energy coursing through my veins, like a fire igniting the purpose I had only just begun to understand. The isolation was palpable, but it also felt liberating. I was no longer bound by the chains of my previous beliefs or the expectations of my family and community. In that solitude, I could hear the whispers of the truth more clearly, revealing the hidden agendas that had held so many captive, including myself. The elite thrived on the deception that kept us at odds with one another, and I felt the urgency to share my awakening with others. During my journey, I confronted the realities of the spiritual war that surrounded us. I couldn't help, but reflect on how many souls were still lost, blindly following a path that led them away from love and understanding. As I walked, thoughts of my family invaded my mind. Would they ever understand the transformation that had occurred within me? My heart ached with a mixture of pain and hope. The thought of reconciliation fueled my steps. I envisioned a day when we could gather and speak openly without fear of backlash or condemnation. I wanted them to see that my departure from our traditional beliefs was not a rejection of love, but an embrace of a more profound, compassionate truth. In my solitude, I began to share my newfound faith with those I encountered along the way. I sought out others who had experienced similar awakenings. In that communion, I found strength and camaraderie, a collective yearning for liberation from the false narratives that had dictated our lives for so long. With every story shared, I felt an unshakable connection, a realization that we were all part of a larger awakening. Together, we became voices against the manipulation and division perpetuated by those in power. This is truly where my heart found peace amid the chaos. A community united by the desire for spiritual truth. Every encounter in the desert was a step toward reclaiming my own identity and purpose. The stories of others echoed my own struggles, and in those shares, I found the courage to continue my journey. I could see how the spiritual war played out in each of our lives, fueling the urgency to awaken and confront the deception around us. I imagined the waves of this awakening spreading, rippling through the lives of others who were still ensnared, just as I once was. I knew that the path ahead would not be easy, and the possibility of further loss loomed large. But I felt ready to face it all. Armed with the truth and the support of my newfound community, I could sense that I was on the verge of something monumental, both a personal transformation and a collective awakening. As I reflect on the journey that brought me to this moment, I realize just how deeply intertwined our lives truly are. Each of us a thread in the intricate tapestry of a divine narrative. Through my experience of confronting despair and stepping away from the shadows of deception, I've come to understand that we are part of something vast, something sublime that transcends our individual struggles. The spiritual war is not just an abstract concept, it breathes through us, inviting each of us to awaken to the truth that we all, too often, overlook in the blur of everyday life. I urge you to ponder this. Have you ever felt that stirring within you, that inkling that perhaps there's more beyond what you see, a greater purpose or connection waiting to be unveiled? I invite you to share your experiences with me in the comments. Together, we can navigate this spiritual terrain, supporting each other as we seek to break free from the chains of ignorance that bind us. Your voice matters, and who knows how many others will resonate with your story. If you feel even the slightest hint of that call, don't slip away without subscribing to Truth from Beyond and activate notifications. The revelations that await us in future videos could very well guide you further along your path to awakening, as they have for me. We are on the brink of a transformative journey together, and I would be honored to share it with you. In the next video, we will explore a powerful testimony from another soul who broke free from the confines of fear, someone who discovered the exquisite love of Christ in the most unlikely of circumstances. It's a story you won't want to miss. I am Ahmad, and I thank you for being a part of this moment with me. Remember, truth is an unending journey, and together we have the power to light the way for ourselves and for others. Stay curious, stay courageous, and let the awakening continue.